What's going on, Nation? Transferring the chat from Twitter over to YouTube because there's a chat feature on here. I mentioned it just before on Twitter. I'm not entirely sure what happened to the Twitter Live chat feature. Of course, most of us used to have these in detail discussions on Twitter. I think some of the best discussions of my life with you guys. And unfortunately, those no longer exist because the chat feature is just completely shut down on live chats. But segueing over to YouTube, and that's why I just keep pushing people to subscribe on YouTube for these type of discussions because, as I mentioned, I know we've all had a ton of fun and a ton of insight across all sports and personal life and psychological awareness and whatnot on these discussions. So just going to open up the forum here and want to get a discussion going. Having a cup of coffee here. Got my brother coming in here. As I said, Thanksgiving week. Cheers to you guys. The best of times, ultimately. And I see 4 people in the chat. And shout out to you guys for coming over here. I know coming over here is a big ordeal for most. Apparently for 4 people, it's not. I appreciate the shit out of you guys. And I'm not sure what Lewis is referencing. Please elaborate, my guy, if you don't mind. If you're trolling me, then I'm giving you good vibes. I can open up my heart here and give you love if you're trolling me because I think you are. And truthfully, we're up in all sports this season, my good friend. So just remember that. We are up in all sports this season. So biggest downfall in sports betting history. I think that must be some sort of beautiful narrative you have from the trolls. But trolls need love. We send you love, and we will move on to the next topic. Curtis Woodring, what's up, brother? Pell's absolute hammer. Of course, the Knicks outlier the first half. Minnesota was shooting 68% from the field through the middle of the second quarter. Unavoidably, there's variance in sports betting, and sometimes you're on the wrong side of variance. That is variance. We're not expecting Minnesota to shoot 68% from the field for about a half of basketball, and the total to go over by 1.5 points at the line. So you're just gambling, and this is a beautiful comment to our guy Lewis, who is obviously a good souled person, but maybe struggling with his life. Truthfully, this is gambling. I talk about it every day. Sports prognostication is gambling. It's not gambling like casino gambling. It's not gambling like playing slots or shooting dice. It's just variable within small windows. And when you look at what happened in the Knicks game, it's a perfect example of that. And, I could go through my sheet here and point out to you guys about 6 or 7 different outcomes in the last 2 weeks where we lost a bet by 1 bucket. And again, this is never excuse. This is pure conversation because it's just certifiable facts. Sometimes you're going to be in a cluster on just the south side of the variance. And, to assert that I'm on the biggest downfall in sports betting history, first of all, is completely factually inaccurate and a certifiable smear campaign. And it just fires me up because I know there's people in private chats that come after me as a person without any actual facts. The facts are there is variance in sports betting. And most people are just incapable of looking at a box score or actually understanding statistics. Most people are very results oriented, AKA it won, it was the best play winner. It lost, it was terrible. You're shit. That's not how to evaluate sports betting. You have to actually understand the dispersion within a game. And sometimes the right analysis doesn't win. And sometimes the wrong analysis wins. There is a gamble to it, unavoidably. And I will never, ever shy away from that point of conversation because it is not an excuse. It is certifiable facts. And if you're incapable of looking at statistics and understanding it, I would tell you one thing. Please do not bet anymore. And that sounds crazy, but it's just the truth because if you don't really understand sports betting, that you're in a statistical endeavor, you're going to lose a lot of money because you're not looking at it accurately. And I think people need to have their eyes open a little bit to what they're really getting into. Sports betting is not about being a big sports fan and having a read on a game because you watch the team and you know what's going on. It's about understanding how to evaluate statistical flows over large windows and small windows as the two correlate with each other. So just keep that in mind. Sports betting should be renamed. It would never be renamed this because sports books want to keep taking your money and fooling you into thinking you, the fan, knows something and you're going to make these terrible wagers which bankrupt you ultimately. But what it really should be called is sports statistical analysis, and you are required to have 2 degrees passing tests statistically to actually place a wager. If sports betting was actually segregated to the amount of people that understand statistics and psychology, about 1% of the current market in the world would be allowed to place a wager. And again, that's just a fact. 99% of people that bet are totally and utterly unqualified from a skill standpoint to place a wager. If you're a sports fan and if you think you're making a quick buck because you watch games and you know teams, you are gifting your money to the sports books. And there's no way around it. And my guy Timmy Gator in the house. Hans, what's up, brother? Absolutely. Absolutely. Glenn W., my guy. What up, bro? Cheers. Having a cup of coffee, so I'm a little more lit in a fiery way than usual. Having a little water here, guys. And you know, when I make this commentary, I wanna make this point with significance. This is not a shot at anybody in the world. This is purely something that needs to be said. As a person who bets sports professionally, does professional content, I want to tell you guys, please be self-aware. Please understand. Look at yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, self-confrontation is a very real thing in life. Most people don't do it. Most people delude themselves throughout the course of their entire life and falsify their reality with excuses and false narratives. But say to yourself, do I really know what's going on statistically in sports betting? Do I really, really understand the psychology of groups and individuals? Or is this a loose endeavor that I do with my friends, that I compete with my friends about, that we hot take each other, and ultimately I really do lie to myself on a daily basis and tell myself I know what's going on here numerically? Because I'll tell you guys this, having done this now for 7 to 8 years on the internet, I've learned a ton myself. And a lot of the remarks that I make outwardly are actually points of self-reflection as to where I am now in my life. Because I know going back 7 or 8 years for myself, there were tons of things that I did not know about the numbers of sports betting. I have learned immensely doing this channel and growing through the internet conversation and taking it so much more into detail for myself. And I will say this, if you're not doing this in a professional format for yourself, you don't have to do this exclusively. You don't have to quit your job and do this. But if you're not committing at least, and this is no exaggeration, 2 to 3 hours per day handicapping sports, you're not qualified to bet. It takes 2 to 3 hours a day to go through a card, to really go game by game and figure out what's going on in the game, to psychoanalyze both sides of the calendar within the game, to understand the numbers in Vegas and really what's going on. It's a huge project. It's highly complicated. And, you know, the other day when I said I didn't have any plays, people were retweeting that as if it was some sort of just internet gibberish I was spitting. And Adrian, I think, has been kind of on the ledge recently. Adrian, you're my guy, but I can sense a little bit of edge from you. I hope you're doing all right, because I know you've been kind of scattered in the past, but feel a little edge from you, my guy. Hope you're feeling right. But I would say this. Isn't that why we tell you? I'm not superhuman, bro. I'm not superhuman. So you know what? We're not always going to win. And again, maybe you missed the point about variance within sports betting. If you look at the Wolves side tonight, we had 215.5 to finish at 217. Was it wrong? No. They shot 68% for the first 40% of the game to get to 117 points. The point here is Be realistic, be smart. Again, understand we are not literally betting sports. Literally. What we're betting is statistical dispersions. If you were literally looking down on Earth from Mars, you're not betting sports. You're betting the clustered activity of human beings in the angles of energy, basically. It's actually bizarrely wild what we're really doing here. We're not really betting sports. We're betting energy dispersions and clusters. And again, the fact that you're saying I'm on defense again just asserts you're on edge. I'm having a conversation, you're poking into the conversation with sort of bizarrely backhanded antagonism, and that I'm somehow defensive. Again, be self aware. Think about the context of what you're saying. You're saying basically, isn't that why we tell you what's your deal? And the point is, I'm explaining it is not a simplistic process. And I do want to make this remark. We are up in basketball through 1 month. Last year, we were down 14 units at this point in the season. So if you think as a discerning human being, why do you tail me? You tail me because I have self-awareness. And I know that the reason why last season went completely off the grid is because in November, which is a very unsettled environment in pro ball, new teams, new rosters, new groups, whatever you want to call it, you can set yourself back financially in the first month far more than you want. And secondarily, it really affects your ability to see the sport correctly for a period of time. And thirdly, within a public forum, people just unequivocally lose trust like that. So the point is, I know we're going to have a great season. I know that. However, in this window, I'm being more careful. I'm genuinely being more careful because last year was catastrophic. Granted, we were only down about 20 units at the worst point. It wasn't as bad as people wanted to make it seem, but numerous people stopped betting with us. Numerous people changed their narrative about me as a person within 1 month of a very, very shitty sample. So I'm being more careful. And I understand I'm doing numerous things within this channel. Not only am I betting, but I'm also really, really creating an environment and a community. Trust is very important. And I know I lost the trust of a lot of people last fall. I'm very aware of that. I was in a very difficult position. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I really made some mistakes. And I've said this before, I've made some mistakes. However, I learned from those mistakes. And I really have become a hell of a lot more of a mature human being in the last 9 months alone. And I do firmly believe, outside of certain hyperbole, that everything happens for a reason. And of course, I say outside of certain hyperbole because you can't argue that some crazy things happen for good reason. There are certainly things that happen in life where it's hard to argue there was good behind it. But I would say 98 to 99% of mistakes are growth points for a person. And for me, that's exactly what it was. I was coming off a hugely profitable season. The show with Jay Money was absolutely popping. I felt the need and the pressure to win bigger than the previous season. So the point is, season 1, 2 years ago, as the reference point, plus 110 units. To one up that, to get to 111 units, that's a lot of self-expectation, and it forcibly puts you into maybe a bit of an uncomfortable, rushed environment. And again, just looking back on it for myself, I know for a fact I was feeling super rushed and super pressure last year. There's no question about it. And it brought me to a point of personal unhappiness because the expectation was bigger than the results were even possible. You know, it's impossible to win in NBA 6 days a week, 8 months a year. It's literally impossible. I set a completely unrealistic standard for what was going on. And I had a guy. I blocked this guy. And I will say this: I have a zero tolerance policy now on Twitter. I block people if I sense a bullshit energy about you, because that's what got me into trouble a couple years ago. And people on the internet have a lot of wings, and not good wings. People can say whatever the hell they want. And ultimately, I had a guy that had been kind of cynical for about 2.5 years last night finally say to me that he unequivocally had decided that I have no idea what I'm doing and that 2 years ago was complete luck. I blocked the guy because I can't deal with lunacy, irrelevant commentary like that, and complete false logic. And it gets to a certain point of almost a smear campaign, because to actually assert that what I do is luck is so ignorant and truthfully insulting to the amount of work and energy I pour into this channel, that I just say to myself, I used to engage guys like this and try to have a conversation. They just don't see life through the same type of lens. They see it through anger, results-oriented thought, and really cynical, deep-rooted nature. And I always define this word when I use the word cynical, because I didn't know what cynical meant for about 28 to 30 years. I thought it meant angry or something. What it actually means is it means that you think by default people are out to get you. People are running some sort of scam. People always do things rooted in some sort of self-centered way. That by default, people don't have abundance about them. That it's all about themselves. They're out to win for themselves. And to a point, they would go down a road of deviance to win the game. And when I sense cynicism, I feel bad for the person, to be perfectly honest, because cynicism is not born into a human being. It comes throughout one's life and how they perceive life based on what they've seen. But it's a real dark path to go down a conversation with that person. So I will bring out the block, and it's not an offensive point, because it's just self-protection for myself into the amount of conversations I used to engage with, because I genuinely care. I want to help. But I realize some people are so far down their dark path, I can't go down that route anymore. And let's talk some sports here. Let's see what's going on. Off the grid in the house, Rockets plus 900 in game one sprinkle. Jose Sierra, because your ex, we all know. Yeah, you're right. I mean, truthfully on that, I mean, you guys know me well from the standpoint that I am an open book. I'm a very conversational person. I don't believe in hibernating as a person. I don't believe in hiding things from people. I've said this so many times, but I truly believe this. I believe this whole idea that there's a professional self and a personal self really is just, it leads people down a lifestyle of polarization and isolation, because you're not really a professional and you're not really private. You're a human being. You have thoughts. You need to express your thoughts. And you shouldn't be forcibly put into an environment, quote unquote, professionally for 8 to 10 hours a day where you can't be your genuine self. And you have to really hold yourself back and not speak. That's what leads to a lot of stress, chaos, and ultimate sickness down the road. And there's a lot of studies that prove that corporate America leads to premature death and sickness. And it's not just because people are sitting at desks eating shit food. It's because of the mental health aspect, where people have to be fake during every day of their life, Monday through Friday. And people don't want to be fake. People want to be authentic. But the professional world, in a lot of contexts, makes people be fake. And I'm not fake. And that's why you guys have heard me say very personal things that you would never hear any other handicapper say. Genuinely, you could probably say on record, you don't know shit about any other handicapper. Nothing. But isn't there something nice about actually knowing what goes on in the person's life, and not this just falsified perfect reality that most people fake on the internet? Like, I would have it no other way. I mean, I got trolled. People talk shit on me, this, and that. But, when I really step outside of that box of the turmoil I was in my life, I have no regret on it because I enjoy telling people what's going on. When I hide things, which I don't do, but if I ever did, I would feel far, far worse. A lack of authenticity, I feel like, is one of the most uncomfortable feelings a person can ever go through. And unfortunately, a large portion of the population live in inauthentic atmospheres, professionally and sometimes privately as well. You have to fake it your whole life. And when you finally get out of the presence of certain people, you get to take a step back and relax. But that's not how it should be. You shouldn't have to get through moments of your life. I've always thought this psychologically that you're only here for a certain amount of time. Why are you wasting time in miserable moments with people where you're just trying to get through them? Your life is supposed to be enjoyable. That doesn't mean there's not going to be struggle, strife, work, whatever you want to call it, but it has to have some enjoyment behind it. And I just sense this lack of enjoyment amongst people across the world. And I think to myself, it shouldn't be this way. And then I go back to the point. I think it's because there's a lack of authenticity. Because when you're at a job and everybody's just putting on a complete front and nobody's having a legitimate conversation, everybody's just kind of acting some sort of fake way, there's a weird, palpable tension in the room. And it's like everybody wants to say something to break the ice and say, okay, guys, what's really going on? What do you actually think? Like, who are you behind that screen you're putting on? But people don't do it. 10 years go by, 20, 30 years go by, and you work alongside some person, you go back on your life, you say, I never knew anything about that person. They put on a screen every day of their life for 30 years. And then you come back to the center of it, you're 75 years old, and you say, shit, my life is super empty because everybody I was around was fake my entire life. What the hell just happened for 40 years? And it's wild when you start to realize that. And I know I got people in the chat, all different age groups, and I appreciate the hell out of you guys, 0 to 100 and beyond, connecting with this. I will say to younger guys, because younger guys still haven't experienced these type of truths, be aware of the people around you and how fake they're being. You really take a step back in a moment, be in a moment with people and say to yourself, these people are all putting on a front. I will say this, even going back to high school, everybody's putting on a front. Everybody's trying to be so big time, be the coolest person in the room, do the dumbest shit, to be funny. Like everybody's a fucking fake. And then people say, wow, look at how I was in high school. But oftentimes you're still that way because that's how contemporary life is. There's a deep, deep inauthenticity in the population. And it's really wild. It's really wild. I was in a bar in Pennsylvania about 7 months ago, and I was actually by myself. You guys know this. I moved up there with my girl. She started becoming very, very loose on the side. So I started going out by myself. I've never gone out by myself in my entire life. And I knew nobody in the area because I moved there with my girl. We were in a new area. We were a couple, so we didn't really go out and, in the singles scene and whatever. All of a sudden, I'm just thrust into the unknown. And I go out, sitting in a bar, this place, Volpe's in Allentown, actually. If for any of you guys out in Allentown and Bethlehem, great bar out there, cool as fuck. But anyway, I'm sitting there by myself watching the game. And I'm like 2 beers in, and I'm like, this is complete bullshit. Nobody's talking to each other. This is ridiculous. So I said to myself, in my mind, I said, bro, this is not how I'm going in this game. If whatever's happening, we are going to see what's going on with people. So I literally got up off my stool and just went over to a random dude and said, what's up, bro? Want to take a shot? Guy literally lifted from his darkness and was like, bro, what's up? And I was like, my man, what's going on? Shot? He's like, hell yeah. Take a shot. All of a sudden, the other side of the bar livens up. No exaggeration. Within 3 to 4 hours, the entire bar, 10 different groups of people standing up, interacting. I was going from group to group, buying shots, getting people to liven up their energy. Best night I had in Pennsylvania, but it happens because people don't ever really want to change the paradigm. They don't know how to do it. It takes somebody to come in there and juice it up with real, actual energy. And I remember that night. And I actually went back to my apartment at that point in time. My girl was furious, of course, because that's how people are. They're doing bullshit. They get angry at you. They project at you. But just a great night, great night. And I'd encourage you guys. You go out, talk to somebody you don't know. Just who cares? First of all, it's never going to really matter if it goes wrong. It won't go wrong. Most people that are sitting in silence in a bar or a place, they want to be talked to. Actually, that's the insanity of it. When you walk around society, you feel a stale vibe, an isolated vibe. Everybody wants to be talked to. People just don't know how to break the ice. And I started talking about this in the professional sphere. This applies to the general decorum of everyday life. Walking through the park, walking down the street. People are not just standoffish. You walk in a city street, everybody's so standoffish, it's the whirlwind of the whole thing. People aren't really like that. They want love and connection. They just feel this deep disconnect from people as individuals, that they don't know how to breach this disconnect that we're living upon right now. And it's a very disconnected world. There's no way around it. But people want connection. So it just takes one person to really change the paradigm in a small window of space. And it really is. It really is. It just takes one person. Not everybody has the energy for it. I fully understand that. But just remember that, when you're walking around, say, these people are super disconnected. They don't really want that. They want to have a good conversation and talk about what's really going on. People don't like small talk. They don't like bullshit. They don't like filling space with nothing. Silence is golden. Only speak if it matters. Like you guys notice, I don't come on here every night and talk for an hour. I only speak when I have something to say. But when you have something to say what you actually think, and this is the realness of life. Most people are so overexposed to complete bullshit energy, it drains their soul out, and then they become these, these small talk artists of nothing. One of the things that I believe more than anything, not necessarily more than anything, but alongside this entire commentary point, small talk is complete, utter nonsense. So what do? What's the weather? What do your kids do? Oh, you went out on the lake yesterday. It's whenever somebody acts like that around me, I feel like saying, bro, what's really going on? What's up? How do you feel? And it always brings me back to a quote Heath Ledger actually made before he overdosed. And he said, I wish people would ask, how are you feeling? Are you happy? Instead of, where are you from? What do you do? And this is visionary Heath Ledger before he overdosed in 2007, 2008, or 2000, whenever that was, right after The Dark Knight. But think about guys like that, actors, so many actors that overdose at a young age. People always think, oh, so sad. It's like, but what really is happening here? Most of these guys are deeply caring, deeply empathic, because to become a great actor, to take on somebody else's persona, emotion, and play it out as if you were them takes a deep understanding of the character you're playing. So by default, the skill set of top actors is deep empathy. They have the ability to get inside other people and really see the life through another person and say, wow, I can't imagine that struggle and that trauma that somebody else is undergoing who could be standing right next to the person. And that's why these actors take drugs. That's why they commit suicide sometimes. That's why there's depression, a lot of isolation, because they're deeply, deeply empathic. And that's a crazy thing about society in general. Deeply empathic people shouldn't be killing themselves and shouldn't be taking drugs because they're so isolated and people can't talk about this stuff. One of the things that I really love to do is talk about these things, because I know there's a lot of people that actually feel this way, but nobody will talk about it. And then you get out in society amongst all the BS small talk. And then as a person who thinks and feels deep empathy and connection to people's energy, you end up going back to your house, back to your cocoon, if you will, and you just stay away. And this is deep, deep psychology. Very, very often, the quietest person in the room is the most empathic and the most caring. They are not out to prove themselves. They're in deep thought. They're deeply thoughtful. They're witnessing the moment of all the runaround riffraff of everybody else. Everybody who thinks they're good and they're proving everything and they're cool tonight, they're fast tonight, they're pretty tonight. The quiet person understands this is all surface. None of this really matters. None of this has any longevity behind it. This is all small window tonight. You go home tomorrow, not a lot going on behind closed doors. And you have to remember that. Generally, the loudest person in the room is the most insecure. Generally, the quietest person in the room, probably the most thoughtful, pensive, empathic, but also can be very isolating because there's not a lot of people that are out there talking about this stuff and connecting on it. And it's very important stuff to connect on. And it's interesting because as I mentioned, my brother's coming down to visit me for Thanksgiving. He's been running this Movember campaign about men's mental health all month. It's the end of November here. I don't really get behind that. And here's why I don't get behind it. Because I care so much about not only men's health, but women's health as well, and every human being. I like to get on here when I'm feeling a certain vibe and just talk about it in my context and my conversation. Because I love Jeff, don't get me wrong. He's my guy to the death. Like I was watching Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce the whole segment. Jeff and I are like that. Like we're just, there's so much love and soul connected between us as brothers. But he has not gone that direction in his life of speaking to people. And he loves doing this campaign. He promotes the whole thing. I've said to him before when I didn't get behind it, I said, I just want to do it my way, which is the conversation and hopefully connecting with people in a deeply specific way conversationally. So it's an incredible thing to just have conversation in general. I started saying conversation wins about a year ago. All the things I say are just off the cuff stuff that comes to me when I'm on the air, just the natural words that I use and whatnot. But it really connected with me when I was thinking about it. Because I was like, first of all, I love having conversations with people. I love having conversations with the channel. I love you guys interacting with each other and hopefully feeling a good energy within this channel. And then just by default, I enjoy the interaction. I feel a good energy transfer between the group. Go out in society, the lack of conversation is the biggest point in life that we're missing, really. And it's mind-blowing stuff. So it really is a beautiful thing. And Adrian, I appreciate you, man. All the best vibes, my guy. 100%, brother. Safe travels, man. Yeah, Curtis, 100%, bro. 100%. And again, that's what I'm saying. I'm fully behind that. I back it 100%. The only reason I never got behind it from a promotional standpoint and a financial standpoint was because I felt like it's good to put money behind something. Where are we connecting? Where's the money going? Where's the connection? Where's the help? And help is such a loose word. And help is kind of one of those words that I feel is almost an unproductive word. Like most people that need quote unquote help will never tell you they need quote unquote help. But if you say, let's have a conversation wins, they'd be like, yeah, let's have a conversation. And that's the interesting thing, the stigmas of certain words. Help is like a bad word almost. You don't want to use that word. People that have certain problems, they don't want to acknowledge they have problems. They want to fix it in a more discreet way, particularly outwardly with somebody else. They never want to admit they need help. And I think that's super interesting, just in general. And I think that, I'm not here to help. I'm here for conversation, but the conversation is naturally just a deeply connected point with people that has gone missing in society. So I think it's beyond integral for people to have a conversation. Dabby Cab in the house. What up, brother? Just saw you in here. What up, balls? Adrian, I got lines as well. Fucking right. Ziggy Balls, I'm 37. I'm right there with you, bro. 38. Just turned 38 in August. Yeah, and I hear you on that, man. High school is a tough time. I mean, people are, as I said, 15 minutes ago or however long we've been in here. High school's a tough time. You don't really know who you are as a person. You're changing every year. The insanity of a kid thinking they know what they're doing when they're literally, 16 and 3 years ago they were 13 and 2 years ago they were 11. I mean, that's the actual comedy of kids. When kids start to think they know what they're doing, it's like, bro, 4 years ago you were 10. You're going to tell me you know what's going on here? Get the fuck out of here. And I just think it's hilarious because, kids get a quick ego. They're in school. Everybody's changing. There's just so much, rapid chaos within, the groups of middle school and high school. And I think high school is a really tough time. I mean, I know certain people have a great time and, bless you if you do, but I just think by default, and I'm not speaking from personal experience, but I just think by default, it's a very difficult time because you as a person have no idea who you really are. So how the hell are you going to interact with other people Well, you don't have self-definition first. I mean, the key to life in general is to know yourself and know that you're sustainable within your current self. In high school, by default, you are unsustainable. In adult life, a lot of people are very unsustainable. They just kind of live this life of perpetual unsustainability. But that's just an ultimate goal for a person in life, is to find a sustainable model of living that makes you feel good and confident, where you know that's exactly who you are. And then once you feel good within yourself, then you can talk to people and, kind of perceive the how people react to you well. But in high school, you have no freaking clue who you are. So you have no idea how people are reacting to you. And it creates this interweb of chaos that's just wild, truthfully. And yeah, Ziggy, 100%. It does make people, it makes people feel weak. It makes people that need help actually insulate their lives further. So I think that, just as a point, coaching wise, for anybody who's trying to help somebody, don't tell them you're trying to help, as counterintuitive as that might seem, but don't tell them you're trying to help. Tell them something else. Let's have a conversation. Let's go get a cup of coffee. Let's just do something. Get some activity. I think that's another point too. Motion. The idle mind, they always say, it's the idle mind, the wandering mind is the one that gets itself into trouble. A lot of these old sayings are not wrong. Motion, activity is what gets people into better mindsets, better energy, and more confidence. And this is part of the problem with social media, is that it's made people very, very complacent, to a point of deep, deep world problem, I would say. These devices are a huge problem. People literally are so addicted to these devices that effectively they are motionless in their life. And it's unnatural to the human being. People are not meant to sit on a screen for 8-10 hours a day or more. They're not meant to stay indoors all day on screens. Screens scientifically emit ions that are unhealthy for you. Nature emits ions that are healthy for you. And people wonder why they feel better when they go to the beach, they go out in the woods, take a hike, go for a walk. It's scientifically oriented. It's not just some arbitrary thing. Screens and technology are unnatural. Notice they've only been around for about 35 years. That's insane, by the way, that our entire scope of life is centered around things that have only been around for less than 1% of our entire human population on the globe. Think about how that shit is changing so quickly. Terrifying, actually. And within this quick change to technological dependence, we as a human species are by default neglecting core principles that have kept us mentally and physically healthy since the very beginning of our species, which is largely documented to have been around 50 to 75,000 years ago. So when you really think about that from just a pure point of time reference, human beings survived about 75,000 years without devices in a healthy way to continue to grow and procreate and create the human species in a prosperous, abundant, healthy way. All of a sudden, you put these devices into everybody's hands, it has the ability to disrupt the entire human arc. And that's where we're going. That's where we're going. It's not said enough, because so many people are so addicted to it, they don't know what they're doing. And secondarily, so many companies are making money through the devices. They would never tell you that it's a problematic thing. To be an actual health agent, health coach, somebody that has, positive desires for human beings, you become almost an enigma, because you're telling people to neglect things that everybody else is fundamentally using as core points in their life. Like when you tell people to put the phone down, put your phone on airplane mode, go for a walk, drink water instead of soda, move your body at least 5 times a week, people look at you like you're insane. And they forget that these devices have only been around for 35 years, and they're quickly molding their life into complete utter dependence on a small little thing that's going to control them and make them miserable. And it's actually pretty wild, pretty wild. Ziggy says technology has ruined conversation. I couldn't agree more. I made the comment about going to Volpe's bar in Allentown and seeing people just kind of like commiserating. And I was like, this is not the bar scene that I grew up in. I mean, believe me, when I started going to bars when I was in college around 19 years old, the bar was like just a party. People were, I mean, you go there, it was live. The energy was amazing. You wanted to go to the bar. The bar wasn't like people sitting around looking down at their phones, just like literally commiserating. And it's really problematic. And I follow a lot of life coaches on Twitter, Instagram, and stuff, and I see what they say, and I agree with them 100%. They say all the stuff that I'm saying. All the stuff that I say is original thought based on my own personal experience. But I see coaches saying this, and I'm like, I completely agree with you. But they have the same notions that it's hard to connect with people on this because people don't want to be jolted out of this falsified reality that they're now in with devices and technology. You guys know this. Or I mean, at least some of you know this. People don't want to say that the phone's bad. People don't want to be jolted out of this false comfort level that they've found with the phone in their hand 20 hours a day. It's a complete, utter addiction. And Chad Moody says it's also our failure to control our own use of technology. It is, but I think that part of it, unfortunately, is the fact that there's a large percentage of the population that don't really have original thought. It's very easy to fall into the bubble of these conversations, which is, I would say by default, definitely more intellectual thinking people. There's a huge, huge portion of people on this globe. I'm not sure how many people are on the globe right now. It's obviously billions, 5 or 6 billion or more. But I try to take myself out of my mind and think about if I was a person who was extremely dissimilar from who I actually am, which is somebody who doesn't have any original thought, doesn't really have any control. And I think to myself, there are billions of people on this globe right now who genuinely have no freaking clue how to live their life or what's even remotely going on. Like the rat race is obviously a metaphor. I would go as far to say that if you were looking down on the earth from Mars or further out, however far you want to go, in terms of the actual size of rats as we see them running around like, looking for cheese and whatever the hell, you could make a legitimate metaphorical argument. Humans are purely rats. They don't really have a lot going on. Most people, unfortunately, really don't have a lot going on. They don't have a ton of inspiration. There's not a lot of original thought. They don't self-generate energy. They don't take care of themselves. Their life is relegated to just sustainable flatness. Mediocrity is actually a flattering term. It's depressing. I genuinely believe that over 3/4 of people on this globe live a completely depressing lifestyle. They might not even be depressed because they're so naive, but fundamentally to what the possibility of a human life can be, it's a depressing life. And you walk around cities, you walk around suburban areas, if you really take a step back and look, you say to yourself, this is absolutely depressing. This is unreal. These people are neglecting the beauty of human life, which is the ability to build yourself into something better and to feel good in the process of that building for yourself. And people are just so far gone. And technology really is a root cause of it because now people have a perpetual scapegoat to sit around doing nothing. And it really is, it's unfortunate, it's problematic. And this is the deep sociological point in this conversation is that these phones are not going anywhere. This is just the beginning of this. And, when you look at movies like, what's that movie? Blade Runner. Look at movies like Blade Runner, Harrison Ford from the 80s. And again, going back to my point about actors being deeply empathic, screenwriters are very philosophical. They're incredibly smart. Incredibly smart. That's why a lot of movies write scripts like Seth MacFarlane on Family Guy. He wrote scripts like Calling the Future. It's because he's so fucking smart. Like Hollywood gets a bad rap. These people are visionary philosophically and sociologically. But you see movies like Blade Runner, they're telling you that's the future of the world. The entire world is infrastructure. There's no nature. And the insanity, literally the insanity of what really is going on here, that is where the world is going. The world is going to Blade Runner, where it's all smog, darkness, and infrastructure and machinery. Not in our lifetime, not in our kids' lifetime, or in the next even 1,000 years. But truthfully, the end of this world, based on the current arc and model, is due to technology and perpetual infrastructure and overpopulation. The whole world eventually is going to be a city. And think about how terrifying that is. Our personal health in this world is totally dependent on getting out in nature, taking a breath. I was in New York City about a year and a half ago. It was unenjoyable for me from one perspective. I love New York City. The people are unbelievable, but I couldn't take a clean breath. And it actually gave me a bit of stress. I was like, shit, I'm kind of in this fucking box. I got to get out to the suburbs just to take a breath. I'll come back tonight. But it's real talk. And if you really, really think about this, extrapolating to thousands of years from now, people are not stopping procreation. Cities only exist because of overpopulation. And as people continually overpopulate, there's no space. So then the suburbs become the cities, the wilderness become the suburbs, and this process keeps going down this essentially, just dissolution of the human earth. And this is why people, conservationists, environmentalists, oftentimes they get a bad rap for being, left-wing politics. And unfortunately, sometimes they're not articulate enough to really explain what they're saying without becoming hyper-aggressive and therefore ostracizing their own remarks, which are oftentimes intelligent. But they're right. They're right. Overpopulation, the technological dependence, it's going to build out cities across the country, across the world. And that's where you see a movie like Blade Runner. That's the philosophy behind it. And this was written 30 years ago. These guys are geniuses. They're philosophical geniuses, because philosophical geniuses see the future, because they look at what's happening right now. And they look at human nature, as to how human nature is reacting to the current status point of society. And they say, is this going to continue or is it not going to continue? And if they see a continuance, they say, okay, if this keeps continuing for a period of time, where does this really go down the line? And our current state of human race and human population is going towards an end game of continuous indefinite overpopulation, over technologicalization, if that's a word, and over infrastructure, where it's going to get to a point where there's no space in the world. People can barely breathe. The anxiety's times a million. You go to a city, people always say there's so much more anxiety in cities. It's not coincidental. These aren't people that were born with stress and anxiety. They're just living too close to other people. They have no space. They have no control of their environment. And not only that, but there's such a premium on lifestyle. They have to overcompete and put themselves into really unsustainable health points to even remotely survive. The fundamental point is that people are not supposed to live in tight quarters around each other. And city life is very, very unhealthy. Very, very unhealthy. And people that live in cities would say, Shark, it's great. It's not bad. You have culture all around you. Food is amazing. Drinks are amazing. Social life is awesome. There's gyms, there's sport. It's great. But really, again, not zooming in. We always talk about this in sports betting. Sometimes you got to zoom in. Sometimes you got to zoom out. On this one, you have to zoom out. And you have to actually look at the future of the world and say to yourself, the entire world is going down this route where the entire world is going to become a city. That's highly unsustainable, because there's no health quotient behind it. So it's really fascinating stuff. Really fascinating stuff. Ariel, my guy, appreciate you, man. Big dog. Jose Sierra says, my guy, I like the Sharky Talk. My guy, appreciate you, man. Been doing this for about 4 years now on Twitter. Just stopped doing it because there was no chat on there anymore, which I honestly have no idea why. We probably, I can't remember how many hours, but I mean, over the years, we must have logged at least 100 hours of psychological discussions and, world talks and whatever. Philly Liverpool, what up, brother? Ziggy Ball says people tech people in the same house. I know, it's unbelievable. 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 And you can see it too. I experience it sometimes. I see people as they text more, all of a sudden the next day they become more shifty-eyed in conversation. They can't make eye contact, and they're like, and then they're like kind of like skitterish. And it's like, guys, you're losing your ability to interact with people in a normal way, and it's not comfortable. It's really not comfortable at all. But anyway, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up on that. Had a little coffee here, just jacked up, wanted to fire some philosophy. Just want to drop one play. We're playing the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day, 12:30. Great spot. Detroit off a horrible game. Green Bay off a win. Great line, the whole thing. So buying that. Haven't played it yet because I'm wondering if there's going to be steam somehow bringing this down to -7. Not that I'm entirely worried about it, but you do want to take a push if it's ever going to come. We had that with New Orleans 2 weeks ago against Chicago at -7, so it will happen. And it is fascinating. Glenn, I appreciate you immensely. The more you know, the more you know you don't know. Exactly, 100%. And I think as you zoom out, I think that the exposure point and the real depth of what goes on just keeps zooming further out. Look down on Earth. Look down at our solar system. You just look and you say, okay, you are in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing going on. Why is it so important to do this, get this, do this? When you really take the edge off your life and you say, generally, this is very unimportant. Everything is generally very unimportant. The only thing that's fundamentally important is to keep yourself alive. Therefore, you should be doing healthy things for yourself. Health becomes the baseline point for your entire day. And I will say this because I don't do health content. You guys have heard me, as I said, I probably put about 100 hours on record talking about this stuff. Far before I do NBA prognostication picks and shows, I take care of myself. I work out almost every day. I do yoga, I run, I lift weights, I do high intensity interval training. I drink about 2 gallons of water a day. Every single morning I eat eggs, 4 eggs, a little bit of bacon, nitrite-free bacon. I eat banana, watermelon, mango all day. All I eat is fruit, vegetables, meat, and eggs. And occasionally I'll have a 6-pack of beer. That's my life. I prioritize health over everything. Health first, everything flows from there. When you take care of yourself, you feel good, you feel survivalistically centered, then you can really do things profitably for yourself financially. So keep that in mind, guys. Take care of your health first. Good things come when you feel good, you feel healthy, you feel confident. Going to leave you guys on that comment. We'll be out here tomorrow. The Sharky Waters Nation, 9 Words of Lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. Let's fucking go.